Okay, Alex Answer here for May 31st, 2018. I'm going to be reflecting on the place in which I was born, Portland, Oregon. Now, it's been a couple of years since I've left. If you look at my commentary on Portland, it's not very positive. But there's a reason it's not very positive. It also has to do with that city has a magic and a beauty to it that is almost corrupted by all the people that are there. But I can't necessarily blame the people that have moved there or to blame outsiders. Being an outsider myself to Colorado, they came from Oregon. It's uncomfortable being an outsider. You just can't blame outsiders for regional problems. There was a sense of relief when I left the region in Oregon, and other people have empathy for what I'm saying, that watch my channel that also left Oregon. You know, both my mother and father left Oregon, but for different reasons. There's something about all of us. Like at one point, there was even like a family unit to a certain degree. I'm not going to break down crying, but there's a part of me that has writer's block in my life story. It's talking about growing up in Oregon in the 1980s, and it's very difficult for me to write about my childhood. There's a lot of pain there. And I try to compose myself. There's a lot of pain between me and Oregon because at one point I lived on 40 acres. My grandfather was alive. He's no longer alive now. My mother lives in New York. I haven't seen my father in years. There was a time in my childhood where there were family members and the places where little Alex was going, from dad's house to grandma's to grandpa's, and everyone's dead and everyone's gone. So writing about that is difficult. There's blockages there. It's difficult, but I'm going to get there. You know, but for all the negativity that I've said about Oregon, you know, there's a part of me that should open up and share with you that detail. You know, what is it about me living off the grid as a way of life combined with my own, you know, belief systems and wanting to get away from society? It's a part of me that's returning to my childhood. And even though it's not 40 acres, it's one, sure would be nice to have space on both sides and not be so close to the road, not be so close to the mad chloride. Now I know that when people drive by and I'm close to the road, it's not just the noise, it's the sinuses affected by the inhaling of mad chloride. And so I want to believe, you know, when my friend Angelus and others, you know, see me growing beyond this place. And I want to grow beyond this place. But part of me coming here is trying to heal from life wounds, I guess. Society, too. The things that are going. It's a number of different things at once. And a part of me can dwell. And there's a place where we dwell, where we go. And it's where there's unresolved stuff, or a place where you go where, you know, it seemed that there was a part of us that was pure. And for me, when I think of purity for my own self and experience as a child, it's elements of the Willamette Valley. And growing up, I wouldn't say so much Portland, but even Portland itself, that, you know, there's a time in which a flower blooms and then it fades. And at sometimes there can be an infestation. You know, I've often called Portland the city of the wounded goddess. I think a place like Portland, who knows, maybe it'll have its good times again. These things do tend to have their cycles, the ups and the downs. But I feel that I was told some really interesting stories about Portland's culture and society in the 70s and 80s. Already our society was blooming and interesting, and things were a little bit more romantic. I mean, the songs on the radio, people were getting down on it, and you think about just that period in time, Portland seemed to have that spark, one strong enough that it brought two people together that created myself in Portland, Oregon. And that was also an intense solar cycle, by the way. 1979, 1980, 1981. I was born in 80. I have an interest in the sun. The sun was abnormally active, they say, during that period. There was also the invasion of Afghanistan and the explosion of Mount St. Helens and my birth. I feel that I was born at an interesting period of time, okay? I was born! I was born in 1980. There's something about those of us that were born in certain times and places, okay? Just lots of thoughts are bouncing out of me. So I think that I was born at a unique time and place, and that place was Portland, Oregon. And I think that I've seen the beauty of the human soul in Portland. And I believe that in Portland I learned to sing my message. That's why it's difficult, because that no longer exists. I no longer have that reality. I see Portland as unaffordable. Others live there now, and I don't need to whine and complain. There's a high and a low. And why are people drawn to Portland? It has a particular energy and frequency that people have experienced from all over the world. And it is a melding of ideas. It's a melding of ideas, abstract as they are, as weird as it is. It's at a different specific part of the planet. Some people think it's ancient Lemuria. It's something about the ley lines, I swear. But I also swear, because of my discussion about the paranormal and the types of guests that I had on my show that were watched by people on cable TV in Portland, Oregon, for those of you that believe in the power of thought, some people didn't like the things that I had to say, especially during the Obama years. And I've ranted about this, and there's pain there. I feel dissed. I mean, if you really think about it, a guy like me does go well with elements of the counterculture. But because some of my stuff and views and personal pains are a little bit intense for people to deal with. Some ideas are a little radical. And talking about a potential breach of the nation's defenses, China, people don't respond well to that. Maybe tomorrow, maybe in a few years. You know, I'll be more active with other members of the alternative media. Instead of it being like this, we'll maybe figure out what we do agree upon, respect each other on. That would be awesome to see that type of conscious alternative media. I don't know if we're going there, man. But I think ultimately we have ups and downs, and I'm not completely a nihilist. I believe that there are good times and bad. And see, the thing is, it's in human nature to move, and things happen. Portland's had those booms, if you will, population booms. And there's going to be stresses on the population, and my overall outlook for it just isn't very good. And my experience was not very good recently. But I think, you know, when people hear my videos and they see me expressing the pauper's perspective, the dude who doesn't have a home, who's literally in Portland every night. I was living in my vehicle last year, and so I wasn't experiencing the night. See, and so the nice side, well, people say, well, the nice side, people have the money to actually go out and do things. Not just to rent a room and live somewhere, but to go to a restaurant, to have some beers with someone, to go out and see a show, and to do things, to go out shopping, to experience the nicer things in life. Then yes, if you're in a position to do those things. But you also got to remember, in older Portland, or Portland, you know, not to go back 100 years, the Shanghai days are 150. But to like when it was like a lot more cooler and safer to live in. So we're talking about like the turn of the century, the 2000s, going up, and I think most would agree 2008, around the Occupy time. At that time, the economy seemed to be teetering. People definitely complain about their own economic problems, but the cost of living for people, not only in Portland, but even communities like this and others, affordable housing issue, and an increase in homelessness, not overnight, but just like that, to the point where in 2014, it was a huge issue. 2014, 2015, during the time period that I'm coming back to Portland. That's homelessness. People live on the streets, and that includes people that aren't typically homeless or drug addicted. It's an issue of affordable housing, and if we're going to talk about jobs, I'm just going to sum this up. It's not a matter of people not wanting to work. It's the type of stuff they have to put up with in today's day and age. It's not just elements of what one would call feminism, but also seeing male managers dip their fingers in the honey pot, so to speak. Every male manager has been fired for sex with staff or sexual harassment, or has been involved in it to a certain degree. And we're speaking of Portland, Oregon. I don't want to jump topics. It's no better living in Colorado, working in the food industry. Yes, Portland, Oregon has a lot of these nice restaurants and things below the surface. There's the corruption, there's the lust. Now, what's Alex talking about? Hey, nothing wrong with a beautiful body. I'll tell you what, I'm feeling very human right now. Not looking at the internet. I'm exposed to a lot of sunlight. I'm feeling human and sharing what's on my mind. But that appreciation for the feminine, can sometimes go too far, to where it becomes part of the culture, to where it goes from respecting the feminine to worshiping that ass. Yeah, baby. And, men can be lustful, right? but we're supposed to. I'm not religious, but we shouldn't just be running around like a bunch of, oh no, gay baby, hey baby. And it's like, if we want to be honest, like elements of our culture or certain cities just promote that in everything that they are, to the point to where the people that they want at the jobs, at the front, at the waitresses, the hostess, are the women that are young and hot. People want to have sex with them. It's just a primitive thing, and we're like still in a primitive world. Dude, I just want to just not go into all that. That's its own essay. Places like Portland are cultures that thrive upon that. You dig? And as things get more expensive, and a lot of people are moving in because of a TV show that are trying to play into a certain type of look, and then people are like promoting that type of collectivist madness, the Portlandia thing, that's very, very unfortunate. Then people that aren't pretty or hip or like the cool kids are left behind. And that's its own chapter or 15-minute lecture. We don't need to go there. You're right on track. You know where I'm going. Cool cities can turn into superficial societies overnight. I think I'm over the tear phase, but man, if I could turn back time and be a little kid again, visiting my dad during better times between not only my dad and I, but better times for Portland. I'm talking about from a macro to the micro. My dad's apartment on 23rd and Southeast Clinton in Portland, Oregon during the 1980s. That was something magical about visiting Dad. It wasn't just about getting away from Mom down in Aurora, Oregon at the Nagel household. It was about visiting Dad during the 1980s. Watching TV, jumping up on his bed, watching the WF during its golden years, drinking soda and eating pizza. And even wrestling with my friend Vince, and then running around the block. And I remember one time I got in trouble for riding the bikes to Saturday Market. It was like, and the people like looked scary to me, Portlanders in like the late 80s and 90s. Like they were like way responsive to like the fads of the day and age, especially like the butt rock thing. Yeah, and everybody who seemed to be in a band. See, I was too young for that, but I got glimpses of it. Oh, there's a lot of people who think they're punks here, man. And I could tell that if I grew up in Portland as a youngin', I would have gotten a lot more trouble. No doubt about that. I grew up actually, not that you asked, a teen who didn't smoke marijuana, who had an interest in martial arts, but didn't go out trying to start fights with people. People started fights with me. Just kind of a typical young, not exactly all-American, that I wasn't really into like team sports and things like that, but I had a hard work ethic. And I think I was intelligent, but didn't do well in school, dealing with authoritative figures like certain teachers and or bullies. Not great with women. So, moved around a lot. The story of the moved around, got a new kid in town. They made a song about me. We got a new kid in town. It became the story of my life, actually, when I was enrolled in 6 high schools in a single calendar year. And not to go into all that, right? But I was born in Portland. There was a period in which I was plucked out of Portland, and it was in the mid-90s. So we're coming out of the gang, yo-yo, whoop-whoop period, and the drive-by shootings being more regular in Portland. And gentrification began to occur, and areas in actually Southeast as well went from at one point kind of run down to a little bit more hip and cool. And like I said, when you have that on steroids, you can have people that are asked out that aren't hip enough or cool enough to go along to get along to even be chosen for certain jobs to afford to pay the rising rents. They're left behind. They're the group. They're the subgroup that's not talked about, the not cool group that's not moving with the trends. And there's different variants of this in the workplace and variants of workplace bullying. And I would connect spiritual warfare to workplace bullying and problems at work. And letting work be something that turns you into someone else. And I did realize this in Portland, but I've seen evidence of this recently. But both work and the pain of the rent realities can change a human being to being more cold and to being willing to be more of a slave to someone else, or to be willing to or want to enslave someone else. You know, I would even think about the links between sexual kinks and living in cities that are polluted. And I'm sure I'm not the only one. I'm sure I'm not making a great stretch. Looking at the artwork that people would display on both their bodies as well as in the bars of Portland, as well as the surplus of zombie apocalypse art, I realized that people were channeling The Walking Dead. This was after 2010, 2011. This is during the Portland Preparedness Days. The zombie energy was there very strongly in a real sense. A little bit of irony there in that Portland has an annual zombie dance. It's been going on for several years. You can watch them on YouTube. They're dancing to Thriller. And as much as I like Thriller, I used to watch that on a regular basis as a little kid. So I'm not opposed to the Thriller. In fact, you know, there is a picture in existence out there somewhere of a young Alex Hanser with a Michael Jackson red jacket trying to do the Thriller dance. So I'm not hating on the Thriller. In fact, that's quite cute. Have a positive Thriller memory of seeing Thriller at my dad's place in Portland as well as in Aurora. Over and over and over again for some odd reason. Maybe some mind control. Who knows? Just like the Saturday morning mind control cartoons. There's actually a book by that title. What I do know is that the zombie memes seem to be surrounding me in both an artistic way and literal way. Literal way, in the sense that people might act like they're awake or act like they're against the system, but still go along without even realizing that they're still part of this controlled opposition. It's kind of a more difficult thing to discuss. I would just say hive mind for now, thinking that they're awake but not really awake. We could think of the co-opted Occupy Wall Street, and how people could be swept up in like the energy of the increase in solar activity, for example, or a few solar flares that gets them going, you know, a few years after the Baker bailout actually started. Here they are in 2011. Oh, now they're moving. Now it's like a world-changing event. What changed? What was all that about? What was it all supposed to be about? It seemed like it was a bunch of screaming in the streets. If you want to ask me about my honest response to Occupy Wall Street. So, Portland is a place that you can even call a portal. That during particular time periods, and I would say solar cycles, how do you think I got really like opinionated about this? The way my mind works, so a lot of other Portlanders weren't as into it. I saw the patterns between periods in which there was more activity from the sun and even how I was being impacted. My dreams, my sleep, my creativity, my energy levels. And periods where I was actually able to go along to get along, where I was working the same job. Can you imagine it? A guy like me busting tables for a full 5 years? How the frack did that happen? Nobody messed with me. Nobody saw me as a problem in their restaurant. Nobody saw me as an undesirable during those years. That's how I got 5 years. Society changed, right? And I saw a changing Portland to my content. Like Portland had changed in response to me as a cable access host, as far as I'm concerned. I think a guy like me is perfect for a place like Portland where I was born. I don't know if there's a future for me there or an affordable place to stay. I think it would be nice to see Portland under other times. But a lot of people should probably be reminded that my experience would be different than the average Portlanders. Why? Because of all the years that I was doing a weekly show on cable TV. What does that mean? Anyone with Comcast cable, which is a certain amount, quite a few, channel surfing would see my show, and because it's not Democrat or Republican, and I'm calling both out, I'm not really making much friends on either side. There are some of you that may identify with one or the other, more on the Trump side, which is not aligned with my political process, but people watch anyways. They may not agree with every video, but they may enjoy some of my content. For example, with Portland, it felt, again, like a very negative experience being on the air because I was challenging the narrative that Obama was bringing change. And it seemed to be deeply affecting my personal life as a young man. And with regards to dating, Portland is a very open culture to a certain degree, also promiscuous. So you mix that in, combined with some meeting people online, combined with a society where more and more men are measured by how much money they're making. And so on one level, it's difficult to be more than a boy toy to certain individuals. When you have a society where rent is exploding, it alters relationships in fundamental ways. And ultimately, I've said this before, but I haven't talked about it a lot lately, because I'm about empowering women to greater consciousness. And so both men and women are responsible for treating other men and women in better ways. Not objects, not dollar signs, not butte. We aren't just dollar signs and butte. Boy toys, girl toys, and ways we can hitch a ride. No. We're human beings that have attractions to each other. And based on that, there are ways in which people can also end up manipulating and manipulated in slave-master relationships. What I have to say about the matter is, in a society where there's a ton of homeless, and a society that just prefers, and it's not just about the hot booty female, and certain type of men that are preferred over other men and women in these workplace environments, especially as management, those that get continually promoted to these particular positions. So the greater reality is, in today's popular city like Portland and rising rents, it's also very difficult to be around members of the opposite sex that the body may be attracted to. But because of these external things that are going on, economics, and the idea that we are of basically different castes at this point. Those with homes, those without homes, those that are doing alternative media, those that are considered normal people. Portland is a place that supposedly is so very open, and yet at the same time is so very closed in reality. You know, it's difficult. As far as like the good things, it's an openness to certain ideas that are a little bit radical. And again, I think it has to do with where it is on the planet. And I think ultimately what draws people is that. Not everybody finds that. Not everybody knows that that's what it is. But see, that very intense earth energy that's there, that sometimes is very strong during certain points, I think it comes with a fair amount of supernatural entities. Stuck spirits from Portland's old past. Not just archonic or what we would call alien or ET energies, but stuck energies from the past. You know, again, there was a sigh of relief in getting away from Portland's field of energy. Leaving what I felt was leaving Portland for the last time, or at least for a very long time, when I left the last time, and that would be early 2015. Getting on 84, heading west. You know, sure, it was in Portland, Oregon, where I found my platform on cable access TV, an opportunity most people don't experience. It was literally a few years after a deep heroin addiction that I experienced in my late teens, and it came all at once. Here I was, a guy that never got in trouble as a juvenile. I wait till I'm officially an adult to go out and get myself a rap sheet, like immediately. And it's just like, I immediately went about destroying my name and image as soon as I'm an adult, and then a few years later I wake up and I think I'm finding activism. Very bizarre Alexandria behavior on the timeline of life. But I was in Portland during what I believe to be those dark ages, and I felt how dark Portland was. But yet there was a blooming. There was a rise. There was a rise from the dead. There was a rise from the dead. I rose. In those last few times, I was never arrested by the police. I was before, but not when I chose to actually finally recover from that brief chapter in my 38 years of life. We're only talking about a few years. And though that could have gone really south, couldn't it? Could have died. Could have done something very criminal. That could have sent me to prison, some sort of a major theft. But no. Instead, I felt myself aligning with the truth finding me. And Portland, even before my last time using, if one could call it, finding information, people, places, and things, it was where I was renting an apartment in 2002 in Hawthorne. Okay, so it was after 9/11, traumatic event for a lot of people, especially those seeing our country going in a very dark direction internally for a number of different reasons. The pain in our hearts about people losing their lives in the Middle East. But for me, I'm 22 years old, don't even have a girlfriend. I'm just trying to hold on. And I'm going back to school. I'm getting off probation. I'm working at the London Grill, which is a restaurant, at the lower level of the Benson Hotel. And I'm going about having these experiences that are leading me to this self-independence that I've never had. and it's the last few years of my grandfather's life. And by 2004, I'm wrapping up one chapter of my life. I'm living down the street from literally where they played the movie What the Bleep Do We Know? And as I'm creating my reality and I'm telling radio host Clyde Lewis, I'm going to change my life and I'm going to start a show. There was something about, even though Portland provided the place for me to fall, it provided the place for me to rise. If that makes sense. The whole thing feels spiritual. Of me growing up outside of Portland, moving into Portland, effing up at Fred Meyer, getting into the drug scene very fast as soon as I'm an adult, pull myself out of the drug scene and becoming a cable access guy, and then moving on to YouTube and then going off the grid. There was something about being born in Babylon and then finding a way to escape Babylon but still caring about the people that live there. And a way, part of me wanting to connect with the people that live in the region in which I was born. And it hurts sometimes that I'm not there. And sometimes I wonder if I should consider being there. I don't think this is the time. And I don't know if it ever will be the time. But I do know that I spoke with a strong tongue about this place, and I just want to share, my story's been a beautiful survival story. Portland's been a part of it. Portland was that place that nurtured me in my first years, where I would even consider some of my videos a little bit unwatchable, a little bit hard. Maybe they still are, but it was a little bit more all over the place and following the lead of certain other individuals that are out there in the alternative media. No longer, no more, right? But Portland provided that opportunity. Specifically the Cable Access Center. A lot of people don't have that. A lot of places don't have that. A lot of people don't have a community where they can share their crazy ideas freely, where they're too young to know what it's like to really be judged by the world. To still be so innocent. To where they'll come out, they'll jump up to the platform if they have the confidence to do it, and they'll say whatever is on their mind without holding back. It's like, Portland's like, here's a rope. You want to hang yourself? Go for it. You'll find out what it's like. And yes, after a few years, I realized when George W. Bush is no longer in office, when it was Obama, that the city really didn't have much patience for me. As anarchist and counterculture as it is. Some days I do wish, and I feel like I'm at to see that someone will read my message in a bottle. That someone does hear what I have to say. But most of all, if there is any major threats coming to the Pacific Northwest, anything that I've said is accurate. Because I do think there's going to be some major changes. I think that it's a major risk area. Maybe they made it popular for a reason. Seems like it's Silicon Valley too, doesn't it? With all that movement up from California and Los Angeles, all the young entrepreneurs, right, ready to build Portland skyscrapers. Next level, the Tower of Babel. Literally, before the whole region just breaks off in a major earthquake and floats off into the sea. Seriously now, I think that Portland, like a rose, like a fruit, it had its period, and it could be said that it's overtaken by human activity. So as much as I miss it, the deeper reason isn't in the rise in rents. It's something else. Even if I had the means of staying there or living there, why would I want to be there? What could really be the future of a region like that, or other regions, even if they had their heyday and we have memories of it? It's like something out of Cheers, where everybody knows your name, dun, dun, dun. But, like I was saying in a recent video, I'm actually very self-honest with the fact that although Portland nurtured me as a young speaker up and coming, although I'm now just primarily on YouTube living off the grid, I'm not really anywhere in particular, which is fine. Portland has that dark side that can pull someone in. Oh, sure, it's earthy, and with that comes other lower bound energies. And that can be difficult for certain people. And I think that there is something about popping out of some of these regions and migrating elsewhere. And I don't think that it's for everyone. I don't think that it's for everyone to live in Colorado or to live in Oregon or to live in some of these different... I'm just sharing part of my story, but for me, right, when I think about like this conscious Portland, and there are people that are drawn there ultimately because there are people with unique perspectives and ideas and energies from all over the world that they're not finding in their own particular locales. And I understand that. And I have total empathy for that. At the same time, right, it's a ticking time bomb for a region that's getting denser. And many people are fleeing out of California. And so as a result, places like Portland are being stressed, and various regions are experiencing an increase in homelessness because of a decrease in affordable housing, because of these areas being evacuated. Dense population areas on the East Coast and Southern California, other economic issues that are basically creating a greater distance between affordable housing and the average worker in today's society. So we're not back in the 90s anymore. We're not in the 2000s. I'm not even going into like modern, like here's what's happening in the news. Here's the greatest headline from CNBC saying that we're this close to an economic collapse. We may be years and years away from a major economic collapse, but we're already living out like new vogue Great Depression era-like realities, where young people like me, older people, other people just can't simply afford to rent something, even if they have a job. Somebody even said it recently that it's unfortunate that I or someone like me would even have to live in this neighborhood if I'm willing to work in town. That's ridiculous. Like the amount of rentals per month in a place like this has just exploded. And see, everybody's blaming the outsider. All these outsiders that are just popping up, and they're not realizing, right, that there are other causes and conditions, and I don't even have all the answers as to why people are X'd out from being able to afford something. People can easily blame it on this person or that person or immigrants or this economic policy or another. It's really a combination of factors. And I think that there's a real lack of compassion that people have in today's day and age with regards to the homelessness. Portland has a lot of services with regards to the homelessness, so there's certainly like a lot of poverty everywhere as a result, not to mention what it's being caused by now more than previous years, a lack of affordable housing. This wasn't a big issue a few years ago. So that's why, in a nutshell, why cities like Portland, on a social level and economic level, are no longer for me. But do places like Portland, Oregon have a very special place in my heart, a very special place in American history? Do I think places like Portland during their heyday have been some of the most amazing places on the earth? Yeah, I think it is.